And our current estimates are that sea level rise in New Jersey could be anywhere from 2 to 4 more feet by the end of this century, with a little bit more uncertainty at the high end, because we really don't understand well enough the processes that cause the ice on Greenland and Antarctica to melt. Another impact of climate change on New Jersey involves what happens to our river systems. This is the Delaware River Basin over on the west side of New Jersey. Actually includes a lot of eastern Pennsylvania, a little bit of southeastern New York. Not only is this the big river that forms the western border of New Jersey, but rain that falls on the Delaware River Basin serves as the water supply for 2 of the largest cities in the United States, New York and Philadelphia. Philadelphia, they just take the water right out of the river. In New York, it's because there are reservoirs up in this red area up here that collect water, and then that water is piped down into New York City. So what will happen to the Delaware River Basin? Well, let's look at some of the things that have happened recently. This is one of those reservoirs. This is the Cannonsville Reservoir in upstate New York. It doesn't look like a reservoir because at this point it's basically at less than 1% of capacity as the result of a couple of years of very dry weather. But less than 3 years later, these were the floods on the Delaware River in New Jersey, north of Trenton. Here's Route 29. Here's all these neighborhoods flooded with river water. A couple of years later, the Delaware is flooding again, hitting the bottom of the bridge between eastern Pennsylvania and Phillipsburg, New Jersey. And the concern here is that as the climate gets warmer, we expect wider swings in rainfall, both more flooding and more droughts, because the cycle in which water is evaporated from the ocean into the atmosphere and then rain falls back onto the land is going to become more intense. Big nor'easter in New Jersey a couple of Aprils ago. This was downtown New Brunswick. Here's Route 18. When I give this talk on campus, I usually point out that even with the road completely underwater, the traffic was only moving a little bit more slowly than it usually does. Those of you who have been to the area know what I'm talking about. Someday the construction project is going to finish, but not yet. This was a storm of historic proportions, 7 and 8 inches of rain in 24 hours. Now, we are not able to say that these storms specifically are being caused by global warming. But here's what the IPCC Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the collection of the world's leading climate scientists, had to say, that there's an increased chance of intense precipitation and flooding due to the greater water holding capacity of a warmer atmosphere. This has already been observed and is projected to continue because in a warmer world, precipitation is concentrated into more intense events. Climate change can also affect air pollution, air quality. This is a study of projected changes in ozone and ozone-related mortality. Now, for those of you who are environmentally aware, you know that ozone is good when it's up in the stratosphere, protecting us from ultraviolet light from the sun, but it's bad when it's down closer to the surface where we breathe it. And ozone is not a direct pollutant. Ozone is a chemical byproduct of things that come out of mainly our tailpipes of our cars. And ozone has to cook, so more ozone is produced on warm summer days. What this is showing is that even if there is no change in the amount of pollution coming out of our tailpipes, both ozone concentrations and their effect on mortality will increase in a warmer world because those warm, sunny days where ozone cooks in the atmosphere will happen more frequently. All right, let's go back to the question of causes again, because the question of causes is related to the question of solutions. Here's where greenhouse gases come from. You can read this pie chart, so I won't rattle off the different pieces of the pie. They're all significant. What I want to point out is that as you look at this chart today, can you identify any part of this chart that's not your personal contribution? Well, the answer is yes. You may say, I don't run a big industrial facility, so these processes maybe aren't so much my doing. I'm not cutting down and burning the rainforests in the Amazon, so that's not my doing. But the better question is there anyone who can look at this chart and say, I'm not contributing to any of these sources of emissions? And I think the answer is no. We have lights on in this room, the computer is powered up. We all contribute to this in some way. So this isn't about good guys and bad guys. This is about a society that has become dependent on fossil fuels for energy, and as an inadvertent byproduct of that dependence, we're emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So solving this problem is going to require new knowledge. It's important for developing alternative sources of energy that do not produce greenhouse gases, like photovoltaics for producing electricity. Carbon capture and storage, which is a way that we can continue to burn fossil fuels but remove the carbon from the smokestacks before carbon dioxide is emitted into the atmosphere. And biofuels, ways of generating energy from fuels that, because they're plant material, remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and then when we burn them, we're just putting that CO2 back in the atmosphere as part of a more natural cycle. Our job in the Climate and Environmental Change Initiative is to try to understand how climate change will affect our society, what the causes are, and what some of the impacts are. But there is research going on at Rutgers and work being done elsewhere to try to solve the problem by developing new sources of energy. And so the remainder of the program today, now that I've told you what the problem is, you're going to hear from people who can help us solve this problem. And so it's a challenge, it's a serious challenge, but it's not the challenge that I lose hope about, because I think there are many ways of dealing with it, and I think our society is now getting to the point where we're prepared to deal with it. So thank you for your attention this morning, and I guess there'll be some opportunity for questions later in the day.